Ever since the release of Marvel Rivals, I've been having a blast in the game. I've been playing strategists mainly because I was a support main Overwatch, but recently I've been exploring other roles like Vanguards, and they're pretty fun. However, nothing compares to the best role out there, the Duelist role. And therein lies one of our main problems. Everyone seems to want to play Duelist exclusively, and I can't blame them. That's where most of the famous characters are. While I appreciate the developer's decision to launch without role queue, this freedom has created issues. First, I'll explain my part on role queue and examine the pros and cons of both options to create a productive discussion in the comments where you agree with me or not. So the TLDR, yes, I believe this game should eventually have some form of role lock, but not right now. I do understand players' frustrations when teams have 6 duelists with no tanks or supports. However, we do need to realize that we are in the honeymoon phase of the game. Everyone is experimenting with their favorite characters and trying out different team combinations. Yes, it is unbalanced, but that's the part of the fun. Role queue isn't needed yet. I've heard many debates about characters like, is Penny Parker actually good? Why don't we see more unconventional heroes in matches? Are these heroes actually weak, or are players just not taking the time to master them? In quick play, this experimentation was fine, but when competitive mode launched, things changed. At first, team composition didn't matter as long as you outplayed your opponents, but as we climbed higher though, we couldn't get away with that anymore. We faced a lot of players with good team sense of cooperation. Our team compositions were starting to get outclassed, and we encountered one-trick players who wouldn't switch even when countered. This showed me why role lock is necessary. When the enemy team runs 2 tanks while we just have 1, rough. My friend who switched from DPS to tank struggled against teams who has 2 tanks like Doctor Strange and Magneto and supports that keep their tanks alive. So here are the pros for role queue. Number 1, it reduces player conflict. I've seen this happen in many games. Players complain when they want to play duelist, but 5 others have already locked in that role. Players who don't get their preferred role often feel forced to switch to tank or support for the team's benefit. Some people will do it, but others will just say, okay, I'm gonna do what I want. The second pro is that I think role queue will improve matchmaking quality. Players often lose matches due to team composition issues when teammates' egos clash over hero selection. Even when someone willingly flexes to tank or supports, or feels pressured into it, their skill level with that role might not match their rank. This leads to frustration when they try to help the team by switching roles but end up underperforming and getting criticized. Role queue solves this by assigning separate skill ranks to each role. Like in Overwatch and MOBA games like League, you might be bronze, silver, and as DPS, but gold, platinum as support. This creates distinct skill ratings and playstyles for each role you play, better matching your true abilities. The third pro is that role queue will be easier to learn for new players in rank. I believe focusing on a single role makes the game much easier for new players. They won't feel pressured to learn multiple roles just to fill team gaps. Many Overwatch pros who play this game like KarQ, Flats, and Emong consistently advise newcomers to focus on mastering one role at a time. With so much to learn, it's best to concentrate on understanding one playstyle thoroughly before jumping to the next. Since we are done with the pros, here are the cons of role queue. Number 1, long queue times. Most hero shooter players face long queue times, particularly in Overwatch where DPS players often wait 10 minutes or more for matches. This happens because the majority of players want to play DPS while far fewer queue for tank or support roles. Number 2, less team flexibility and creativity. Since there is open queue for rivals, where it's a 6v6 and 3 roles respectively, we have around approximately 700 possible team combinations. My point is, there is a lot for you to try out. So that means if the developers do decide to add role queue, players won't be able to be creative with their team comps. Apparently, this has been a big argument in the Marvel Rivals community as of late. However, without role queue, there will be a lot of possible team combinations that you can come up with. For example, 1 tank, 3 DPS, 2 supports, 2 tanks, 3 DPS, 1 support, 2 tanks, 1 DPS, 3 supports, and the list goes on. Number 3, it will create a higher strain on Vanguard and strategist players. And many people just full on bitch and moan about tanking supporting for the team, and the majority of it stems from the 5v5 aspect. However, the role of a tank as a whole is generally boring and unfun for the most part, and some people feel the same about support. You would have 2 options, being the sponge of the team or getting backlash because your teammates are complaining that you're not healing enough. Tanking and supporting in any game is just not as fun than clicking on DPS and pew-pewing the other team. Number 4, people remember the very high highs of having no role queue. It does create that same feeling of joy and excitement that we will want, and people who used to play other games like Overwatch, Valorant, and TF2, and who are against role queue, remember these moments of winning with an unconventional team comp. However, most people often forget how actually awful it is when playing with these said team comp. so they forget how low it can get. Obviously, the developers at NetEase can go whatever they want, so if they decide to split their path, here's where I think if they went down the path of role queue versus keeping the game the way it is. If they decide to go down the path of role queue, bring it only in competitive, not in casual matches. I think most people could come to a common consensus that we can keep role queue in a comp game, while in quick play, it could be any role you want to play. My second point would be minimum one of each role. I think the game should be a minimum one of each role, while the rest can be queued as a flex spot. It will be a minor restriction, but in practice and theory, it could actually work. If we have minimum one, for example, 1 tank, 1 DPS, 1 support, and 3 flex spots, you can create around 10 possible team comps. For example, 1 tank, 4 DPS, 1 support, 2 tanks, 1 DPS, 3 supports, 1 tank, 1 DPS, 4 supports, and so on and so forth. This would be a huge change from this possible 700 down to just 10. However, the minimum 1 removes these annoying comps that really wouldn't work out in most cases for ranked games. I think that this game for casuals will always be fine. It's Marvel, and people love Marvel heroes and playing their favorite character. But for competitive players, high will be the conventional 1 for each role. Only time will tell how long it will last, and if people like the idea or not. It will likely prove that you would need a minimum 1 tank to soak up all the damage, and 1 support to keep said tank alive. People need to realize that supports are broken in this game, because in a game I can farm about 3 to 4 ults in one rotation and around 25 to 30k healing in a game. Now, if they decided not to go down the path of role queue and kept the game the way it is, then they need to make team ups for tanks and supports. I believe that this is a small solution to encourage more players to play other roles. Like guys, this could be actually really good for tank and support mains, like getting a Magneto sword, a Recall and Sonic, for example. Actually pretty insane. We don't need more damage team ups because it will just make the chance to flex less and less likely. My second point is that they would need to add more vanguards and strategists to improve the hero ratio. As of now, there are way too many duelists and not enough vanguards or strategists. They really need to improve that ratio, because if they do, it can improve the rate of people playing vanguards and strategists. For example, if they added 5 more vanguards, it can encourage a broader pool, and it has a higher chance of someone willing to flex because now they see their favorite Marvel hero as a tank. So to sum it all up, I really hope that we do start to get more vanguards and strategists, and that they do decide to add more team ups that actually supports them. But since you guys heard me out for so long, do you guys believe that any kind of role queue would benefit the game? Would it not? Please let me know in the comments down below. I love reading people's comments, as long as we can be civil about it. So let me know. Y'all have a good rest of your day or night. Also, check out card queues and flash channels about Marvel Rivals. I feel like they did a really good job explaining the same issue, but from a pro standpoint. Bye guys.